So, because we want to have a discussion, we want to make this interactive and have fun, and this is the perfect size group where all of you will be able to be heard or ask a question or whatever you want to do. And not only that, you hit the jackpot because we brought a free book for all of you today. All right. And so what you've got to start thinking about, we've got one of our books is called Teaching Children Joy, and it's mainly for preschoolers. Have any of you ever done Joy School? Oh my goodness. Let's try something here. Oh boy, I've got joy. I do. Do you? All right, that's good. That's good. We know you're Joy Schoolers. Or we could do Here Comes Gunny Back, right? And for those of you that aren't familiar with Joy School and think the rest of us are crazy, we're not. We're just joyful, right? And then, so be thinking, if you have preschoolers or grandkids who are preschoolers, as you leave, you want to get the one called Teaching Children Joy. If you've got elementary age kids, you want to get the other one called Teaching Children Responsibility, because that's the transition you want to make. Fun and games and joy for the preschoolers, responsibility for the elementary age. So you'll have to pick, and please only take one. If you're here as a couple, just take one, and I think we'll have enough to go around.
Wow, it's so great to be with you. Is this on?
Uh-oh.
It's green.
Uh-oh. Here, you have this one.
Okay, that's a deal.
Oh, this is working just a little bit, right?
If
I go like this, you can hear me, right? Okay.
Let's just survey the audience for a minute, because I see a lot of different ages, which will be great. How many of you have school-age children?
Come right up here, folks. You that are coming in, here's
Great.
some
And
seats
how about
right here.
preschool children? Just little tiny ones, quite a few. How many have high school kids?
Why did you guys come? It's too late for you. Just kidding, just kidding. Don't mean that. I do not mean that.
I love the teenagers. And how many of you are grandparents?
Whoa.
Wow. That's awesome.
How many, if you'd known how great it was to be grandparents, you would have done that first?
Yeah.
Hey. Hey, this is a fun group, Linda. This is the fun room. This is the fun bus right here. I want to tell you one quick thing, though. They called us just before this was to start and said we had to change your room. And they also said the person that was getting introduced, you had to go somewhere. So I said, thank goodness, because what they didn't know is I have a phobia of introductions, and it goes all the way back. You won't believe when I tell you this how old I am, but I actually worked as a college kid for George Romney. Do anyone remember George, Mitt's dad, who ran for president, and I was his student guy, and I was up in New Hampshire where the first primary is, right? And one night I'm in my hotel room, the phone rings at 2 a.m, and I answered it, and some idiot on the other end of the line says, I'm sorry to bother you at this hour, but I've got to introduce Governor Romney tomorrow at the Lions Club, and I'm so nervous because I just don't know enough about him. Can you give me some facts? I'm like, are you serious? But I told him a few things, so he could make an introduction, and he still wanted more, and he's like taking notes, and can you repeat that? And I finally said, listen, I said, far be it from me to give you advice. I don't even know you, but the man's running for president. He has a lot to say. Maybe a good rule of thumb for you would be the less said, the better. And at least that ended the call, and I went to sleep. Well, the next morning I get up, and I thought, I'm so curious about this guy. I'm going to go over to the event, which I wasn't scheduled to go to. I want to hear his introduction. So I go over there and sit in the back, and this small sort of really uptight kind of a little guy stands up and he says, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Governor George Romney. The less said, the better. And honestly, that's 40 years ago, and ever since then, I'm scared to death of introductions. Now, folks, if you're comfortable, stand for a minute because they're bringing some more chairs in. So you want
and
to stand
there's two
for very
seats
long.
up here,
here's
too,
a seat.
if anybody needs.
Raise your hand if you've got a seat
there's
by
a seat
you.
right there.
Oh, here's two more. Here's
Okay.
two more right here. Who else got a seat by him? Over there, there's two more seats right over there. All right, great. So anyway, we want to ask you a question, don't we, Linda?
We do.
What do you think is, and you can answer this as a grandparent or as a parent, what do you think is the single biggest challenge facing parents today? Let's just get a few, because there's a lot. I just want to see what some of you think.
While they think about that, Richard, let me start with just the challenge of parenting.
Oh, yeah, you be thinking about what you think the greatest challenge is, and I'll give you time to think, because you can only name one, and I know you're thinking of a lot of them. And while you're thinking, Linda will get us going here.
Well, you know, lately I have been thinking about how we have 9 children, 27 grandchildren, and living all over the world. 5 sons, 4 daughters, all ours genetically, no twins, just to get all the questions out of the way. And it really has been such a ride. It's so amazing. But those of you who have young children at home, you are really in the trenches. I mean, it is really hard stuff. And although, as I'll mention in a minute, there's a great side effect to it. And for those of you who were with us last Saturday, this list will sound familiar to you. But, you know, I just think it's so weird that half of the advertisements on television now are for meds. You know, medications that you need to take for this or that. I mean, everything from psoriasis to toe aches. I mean, everything you can imagine. But I think it's hilarious how they go through the side effects at the end. You know, kind of like auctioneer. I mean, like they go really fast, you know, blah, 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 and you might die. And I think, wait, who would take this med? I mean, if you are going to have all these side effects. But I was thinking the other day, you know, there are a lot of side effects to parenting, too. There are a lot of side effects. And I just looked up a couple of medications, and I just found so many things that were similar to the side effects that you have from parenting. Now, see if you don't agree with this. Okay. I got to get this so I can read it. Fast pounding or racing heartbeat, puffiness of the eyelids, headaches, hoarseness.
I get that from parenting.
Back pain, trouble sleeping, increased body movements, mental depression, paranoia, nightmares, general feeling of discomfort, heartburn, weakness, nervousness, weight gain, weight loss, anxiety, confusion, difficulty with speaking, indigestion, depersonalization. I like that one for you mothers. Quick to overreact emotionally, voice changes. I got that one too. Irritability, and the best one of all, euphoria. I just think
that's a pretty good description of parenting, isn't it? Right there.
It's really a good description. But you know, though, just when it gets so hard that you can barely stand it, something happens, and those little children say something or do something, you just think, oh, it's going to be okay. It's going to be all right. We had our 2 youngest were so crazy. We had a 3-year-old Eli who never forgave his little sister for taking over his place as the baby of the family. So he was just merciless and teasing. Any of you have teasers? Teasers, screamers. He just learned to tease so beautifully, and she learned to scream just, outrageously, and to get what she wanted. So, you know, I was just exhausted. There was one point when I was just so exhausted of dealing with this screaming and teasing and so on. And I just thought, you know, I got to do something for myself today. I got to go to exercise class or something. I know I'll take him to the exercise class. I'll put him in the nursery, and then I'm going to be okay. And so I took him down, and guess what? The nursery person was gone. So I thought, okay, I'll put them as far away from me as I possibly can, and so no one will know who they belong to when they start screaming and fighting and everything. And sure enough, they did. They were screaming, fighting, and so on. And then I kind of hurried out of the building, and then I thought, oh, I do have to take those kids home with me. And I had all my mats in my hands and everything. It was in the middle of the winter, and I turned around, and there was Eli coming out the door with Charity, our little one. He was 5, she was 2. He had his arm wrapped around her shoulder so gently, and her little chubby hand, and he's negotiating her across this icy parking lot. And I just thought, he is going to find a snowbank and throw her in it before he gets to me. But he didn't. He just kept getting closer, 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 closer. He gets right up in front of me, and he looks up at me with this little girl cuddled underneath him. He says, toothless grin, "Don't you wish you had a camera?"
Because you'll never see this again.
I thought, okay, you guys, you are driving me crazy, but I love you so much. You're so adorable. That is what we have to remember. And you know what? It gets better and better. You grandparents who are here today, it gets better and better. Day before yesterday was Richard's birthday. And our kids all sent birthday messages
so good.
to him. It's so good, of memories of, and you all had this. Your kids send back memories. You think, oh, it was worth all that trouble. So I'm just going to read a couple of them.
No, those are private. You can't read these.
No.
I hope you chose well.
I chose well. You'll like them. Most of them. He says, one of our boys says, "You made me a power shake almost every morning of our senior year in high school. Once you made a pretty spicy one when you thought that a spicy sausage was a frozen banana." Another one said, "I love those walks, looking at the signs of spring with you." Another one, "Talks in my bedroom when you would say, let me tell you how I think you feel, and then you tell me if I'm right." He was so good at doing that.
Well, look, I don't want you to try to find
No,
a way to
I have
change
just
the
two
subject.
more.
Okay.
3-minute voicemails. 3-minute voicemails. He doesn't know how to talk short, as you'll find today.
I like it when they don't answer because I can just say all I have to say, uninterrupted, and leave it,
And "Come thou fount of every blessing." That's our favorite family song, and those of you who were at the tabernacle last night.
Were you guys there in that tabernacle? Wasn't that one unbelievable?
Was so fabulous.
I was crying. I looked at Linda. She was crying. But how many of you would agree that children are the hardest thing you've ever done? How many? But how many would you say they're also the most joyous thing you've ever done? Isn't that awesome?
Yeah.
When you think about it? That is so great. So here's my question. What do you think is the biggest single challenge facing parents or grandparents today raising kids? What do you think?
Our challenge is getting kids to obey the rules in the house.
Okay, getting them to obey laws, and if they can't obey the ones in the house, maybe it's going to be tough in the society. Back in the back, sister. Meaning what I say. That's an interesting theme. It's the laws and meaning what I say. What's yours? They don't. Good. That's good. This is all tying together.
Yeah.
Yes.
I find that inspiring them into so many competing, sources of inspiration.
Inspiring and motivating them, right? Getting them motivated and inspired and giving them incentive. Awesome. Very good. The law of the harvest. How would they understand the law of the harvest when in your house it's just every Saturday I give you $20? What did they plant for that, right? There's a lot to that, yes. The other cultures, right, that are swirling around them and what they're learning. I mean, one of the things we advocate, which we'll get to later on, and this shocks some people, but we really think one of the key things any parent anywhere can do is talk to their child about sex when the child turns 8. And a lot of people are like, oh, they're still such kids. That's the very point. And if you don't tell them, who is going to tell them? The peer culture. Isn't that a good place to learn about sex? Or the media culture or the internet culture, right? So a lot of this is about preemptive strikes. Very good point. What do you think have we missed some really big challenges? Yes. Getting them to make their own choices. Indecision is a massive problem. A lot of colleges report that by the end of the sophomore year, more than half the kids still don't know what they're going to major in. So teaching them to make decisions and choices on their own. Very good. Yes, sir. Dealing with tantrums. Okay, that'll tie into a couple of the things we're going to say.
Getting them away from their cell phones.
Yeah, getting them away from their technology. That's a huge issue, and we got some ideas for you on that we've tried out and that people have used around the world. Yes. The entitlement attitude. How many of you face that with kids? How would you can almost repeat this with me. What does a kid who's entitled say? Let's see. What does he say? I deserve everything. And I want it right. And I don't want to have to wait or work. What, I mean, how far is, some people blow it off, say, well, they are a little entitled. Come on, we're trying to give them stuff. It's not a big problem that they're entitled, not a big problem. It will affect every aspect of their lives. So we're going to get heavily into that in a few minutes. Couple more. Is there any areas that are really serious we haven't mentioned? Yes. Problem solving. Basic problem solving. Do they teach that in schools? I don't think
There's
so.
one up here, Richard. Oh,
We'll just get a couple more.
We'll come to
These
you
are
in a
so
second.
good. You're unique about, even if your brother might be better at football and more people praise him, you're equal. Very good. How to accept failures and learn from them. Yeah. Because how do you accept failures in a society where there is no failure? Everyone on the team gets a trophy, and you're not even sure if you won or lost, right? Okay, content.
There's one up here,
You're
Richard.
always right. Yes, ma'am.
Balancing, our achievement society, getting our kids involved in everything, but the importance of home, doing work in our home and having a home culture, time for family prayer, family scripture, and the pressure to achieve in
You
society.
are an impressive group. I'm telling you, you're covering the waterfront. Any other really big ones you just got to mention? Yes. Very good. So, look.
one more in the back.
Okay.
The young man with the baseball cap on
Yes,
backwards.
sir.
I love it.
What do you think's the biggest challenge? She took it? Okay. All right. Well, listen, here's the thing. In the next hour and a half or a little less, we're going to solve all these problems for you.
For sure. For sure.
Wouldn't you love it, huh? Well, but we are going to throw out some ideas, because here's the interesting thing about our lives over the last 2 or 3 decades. We go around trying to teach parenting and marriage and so on. Guess what? We end up learning everywhere we go. We end up meeting people who are both really good examples of what you don't want to do with your kids, and a few who are great examples of what you do want to do. So we're going to try to cover some of that waterfront. And Linda, what do you think you want to start with?
Well, let's see.
Let's
what we've got here.
By the way, do you love C.S. Lewis? Isn't he the most incredible? He's been quoted many times. I think this is his greatest quote of all. The most important career is that of the homemaker. All other careers exist to support this one ultimate career. We have to remind ourselves of that a little. And let's hear it for C.S. Lewis. The guy was awesome. Now, how experienced are you as a parent? Well, we've devised a one-question evaluation for you. In a minor crisis,
Do you grab the kid or do you grab the camera? Now, this next picture, you will know whether or not this is a first child.
the more experienced you are, you tend to grab the camera instead of the kid, right? Let's take a look. Do you think that is a first child? No.
No, I mean, you can see the mother over here with her toes going, hey, honey, she's kissing a pig. Get the camera, quick.
So the point is, we're none of us as experienced as we want, but they start so beautiful and sweet, and then you saw this in the plenary, but we wanted to show you again because we've got one additional one. They grow, they get bigger, the family gets bigger, marriages happen, everything starts going nuts. Family reunions, pretty soon you're like populating the earth.
And then, look at this picture. This is amazing because this looks just kind of like the first picture, doesn't it? For little
Except
kids.
it's not yellow yet.
It's yellow. He's colorblind.
It's
He's
starting
colorblind.
to,
You can't
yeah.
tell.
Well,
But
I mean-
for little kids, but this is our daughter with her first 4 little kids. And before you know it, that round goes around. I mean, I
How
know.
many of you can testify to that? You turn around and now it's your daughter, isn't it? It's amazing. Like, where's that little kid? Oh, she's the mother now. And what we try to preach, I mean, the closest we come to preaching as we go around the world is to say, because we speak to a lot of high-powered executives and entrepreneurs, and we try to beg them to say, most of them have kids in their home, and we try to say in 10 years to 15 years, you'll all still have your career. You might have 2 or 3 careers. You'll all still have your golf game. You'll all still have your hobbies or your politics or whatever it is you like to do, but you will not have those kids in your home. You have got to prioritize them while they're there. And when you're a grandparent, that's got to be number one. Like we said the other day, no one on their deathbed ever says, oh, I wish I'd spent more time with the business. The regrets people have are what we're here to be sure we don't have, and that's taking care of our families.
Now, before we go any farther, I think you should do your little story about guilt, because I think the biggest deal in parenting is guilt. We all feel guilty. We should be doing more. We're going to give you a whole lot of ideas today, and we just don't want you to go home saying, oh, man, I'm a failure. Why didn't I think of this? Yeah. Everybody just does the best they can with what they've got. So just pick, one idea or 2 ideas that would really work for your family, but we had the funnest experience.
How many of you feel like guilt is one emotion that parents feel quite a lot, especially moms? I'm going to say it, okay?
Yeah, all the moms' hands went up first.
It's just goes with the territory. And sometimes, let's be honest, coming to a conference like this does what? Increases your guilt. Oh, I saw the Eyres doing all these things I didn't do. I must not have been any good, Please don't let that happen, because we really believe that's, I'm going to be honest, that's a tool of the adversary, guilt. Once he gets you feeling guilt, you can go spiraling down. So here's the story real quick. We didn't know how to say this until this happened to us. But we're in a little church. We're visiting. We were out of our comfort zone. We're in a different place. We're in a little church. We happened to go, didn't know anyone there, but it happened to be that the lesson was on, in Sunday school, was on parenting. And we thought, well, we'll just sit here and pick up a few good ideas. And so the teacher was pretty good. Was asking questions, and the audience was involved. But every time, I swear, this teacher asked about something in parenting, this one guy who was a little, what's the word?
Braggart.
He was a pompous guy, I guess. I mean, he just looked like he knew it all. You've seen the type. And every question, well, the way we did it in our family, and my son, the valedictorian, and my daughter, the head cheerleader, and my other daughter, the head cheerleader and student body president. And if it had happened once or twice, fine. He probably had some good ideas. But about the 10th time, this guy had all the answers. Linda and I were rolling our eyes. I was trying to decide whether to say anything. And luckily I didn't, because toward the end of the class, a little fellow, kind of a rural guy, looked like maybe he was a farmer. He hadn't said anything, kind of quiet. And he raised his hand, and the teacher called on him. And instead of just making a comment, he stood up. He was about where you are. And he stood up and turned around and faced this bragger. And I'll never forget what he said. And you could tell he was frightened and nervous, but he said...
Cute little bolo tie and, Levi's. He was so
I could
cute.
still see him in my mind. He said, excuse me, sir, but God must not have thought much of you as a parent, sending you all them easy kids. And I squoze, Linda and I were sitting together, and I squoze her hand, and I said, amen. Do you see what I'm saying? I mean, are we fools if we judge ourselves and condemn ourselves? Because, you've all had babies. How long did it take you to figure out their personality, moms? About an hour? You knew a lot about them the time you brought them home from the hospital. They are who they are, folks. And you're going to do your best you can with them, but some are easier than others. Am I right? And I love what that guy said. And you could turn it around. What if you turned it around? And what if you met someone that had how many of you have a tough kid? Let's be honest. How many of you had a kid that was really tough to raise? Most of us. What if God... Well, let's just turn it around verbatim, what he said. God must have thought quite a bit of you to send you that challenging child. Is there a chance that could be true? So whatever, I'm just saying, we all made mistakes, but we all did the best we could with what we had, given what we knew at the time. So can we banish guilt from this room right now? How many would vote to banish guilt right now? Okay, no guilt. We're going to just talk about doing the best we can from where we are. If you're a grandparent, a parent, whatever. Fair enough?
And we do have some things coming up for grandparents. We're so glad we
You
see
bet
so
we
many
do.
of you out there.
So this is just one of our daughters, and I just wanted to show you an interesting thing. Look at her daughter. Isn't she gorgeous? She's just like her mom. She gets all the accolades and so on. But I want to show you another picture. That's one of her other daughters. Now, she's beautiful. But Linda, tell about this daughter and what we're trying to say.
This is their fifth child who was born with a syndrome called Bardet-Biedl syndrome. And it just basically means that she's probably going to lose her sight between 9 and 13. And so she's just 9 now.
Look at those eyes.
She's losing her
Look at
night
those
vision.
that
But
are not
imagine
gonna be
those
able
big
to
blue
see.
eyes not being able to see. And she's taking Braille at school. She's learning all she can and so on. And there are issues with weight because they don't have any stop-off valve in their brain. And it really is amazing. But look at this child. What a beautiful
This
child. I know
girl-
some of you have children with special needs. They are so special. And so, you just never know what your challenges are going
This
to be.
girl's the easiest kid you've ever seen to raise. She does everything right. Everything's great. That's an easy kid. This one is a wonderful child, but they will struggle all their lives with some of the... And whether it was a syndrome or whether it was a character trait or whatever, the point is and this daughter of ours has come to have a belief that she was the right mom for this girl. And when you get that and when you say, there's a reason my kids came to me, and the Eyres might be called parenting experts, but they're not the expert on my child. I'm the expert on my child. Then you're halfway there. Another one of our daughters, and so on. I wanted to tell you this one real fast because what's one of the problems with kids? They're none of them the same. Do you remember when you had your first child and you're sort of well into it? You're like, I'm a pretty good parent now. I've had a child, right? The second one will be easy pie because I know what to do. And then what happened? Nothing was the same, right? So look at these 3 boys of mine. See
Now,
that
this
kid
is
in the
about
middle?
30 years ago, and
This is a
actually
long
Richard
time.
just bought them. Well, not 30, but they're all in their 30s now, but he had just bought them these little happy coats from China. So he just said, line them against that wall, and we're going to take your picture.
But they're so
wow.
different. Tal in the middle was a pleaser. Do any of you have pleasers? Did you ever have them? They're great kids. I mean, here's how I would discipline Talmadge. Watch my right eyebrow. My discipline method for Tal. And that was almost too harsh. Tal would say, "You're right, Dad. I can do better, and I will." Right? How would that method of discipline work on Eli? Eli looked like that till he was about 10. That was just his... And his favorite phrase was, "You want a piece of me?" And if I'd done this to Eli, he'd have thought I wanted him to hit me there. So we have to understand, and so you should treat them all differently. And then what does one of them say to you? "But Mom, that's not fair." And what you should say is, I hope when you have a couple of kids and they're different, that you treat them the way they need to be treated and not like you treat their brother.
What I always used to say is, life isn't fair. Get used to it. And when I ask my kids a couple of summers ago, what was the thing that I said that you just hated? And they just said, life wasn't fair. I just didn't want to hear that. I wanted you to say, "Oh, I'm so sorry, that wasn't fair." But anyway, it really is true, though. Life isn't fair, and you can't treat them all the same.
Now we're going fast because we're going to cover a lot. So, and if we hit anything that really bothers you or that you really want to question on, go ahead and raise your hand because this is open and we're in a small group here, so it's kind of great. But what we're doing is raising the responsible, achieving, contributing kids that are going to change the world. And you told me what you thought the biggest problem was, the thing that really hurts us in raising kids. And by the way, we did a national survey on this, not really a national survey, but we're a big national convention. And those were the 6 leading problems. You mentioned a lot that aren't on this list, but those were the top 6. Can anyone guess which was the number 1 out of those 6 on this survey? The third one down. The third one down, actually, when they voted on these 6, 62% voted for entitlement.
Well, and about another 20 voted for excessive technology, and it's kind of the same thing, right? I mean,
Isn't
that
this-
technology really gets in our way.
Aren't those two kind of the same thing in a way? Or the entitlement and the technology, right? Because what they want is Dad, I need the 6S. I've got the 5, and my friends laugh at me. It's just crazy how they're entitled with the technology. So we're going to hit a lot of these things, but before we do, just a couple things for you grandparents to keep you involved here so we can keep bouncing a little. And by the way, we're not really separating you because grandparents and parents, when teamed up together, that's the way to raise a child. And if you're a grandparent and you're not as involved as you want to be with your kids, take your children out to dinner and say, we're here to help you raise those grandkids. You're in charge, but let us know what the needs are and win their trust. What you don't want to do is take them out to dinner and say, honey, I've been observing your parenting, and there's really a few areas in which you fall short. That will not work.
This is a picture that reminds us of how important a family narrative is, and I mentioned that just briefly in the big session the other day, but to have a family narrative for your kids and your grandchildren to know where they came from, who they were, what were they like. This is Richard's father's grave, Dean Eyre, H. Dean Eyre, who died when he was...
You can probably see the date. He died in 1960. I was just turning 15 years old.
He was 39, his wife was 38.
And Linda has grabbed this family narrative. She's been reading about how if you want to measure a kid's resilience, it depends on how much he knows about his parents and his grandparents and his great-grandparents. It really does. He needs to know the stories.
Well, he needs to hear the hard times that they've come through, that you've come through. I mean, it's important for kids to know that your life is just not la-la, that there are hard things that their grandparents overcame, that their great-grandparents overcame. We've just been in Europe, and I just took our daughters and daughters-in-law to Switzerland, where our ancestors came from, one place, and then in England, where another grandmother came from. And it really is amazing what happens when they open their eyes and tell them, this grandmother in England had 13 children, and 8 of them died before she even left for America after she joined the church. And then she lost a couple more. And I mean, just one hard thing after the other. But she was triumphant. She got on there, and she just went and did what she was supposed to. She was sent by Brigham Young from here to Star Valley and settle Star Valley. They're amazing stories, and your kids should know about them.
And you could tell stories to us about that, couldn't you? Have you seen the magic of telling them about great-grandma and the kid, you see the light go on, the kid gets, wow, I'm 1/8 from that person, or I'm 1/16. They're little mathematicians. Linda painted a family tree, and Linda's an artist, among other things, and here's the tree with us on the trunk and the kids on the branches, and then the grandkids out on the little branches. And I'll never forget one day after a story that Linda had told about one great-grandma. Let's see, great-grandma, is that 16? The kids got, your parents is 2, the grandparents is 4, the great-grandparents is 8. And so it was the great-grandparent. And so it was this wonderful story about how she'd overcome some great obstacles. And I happened to walk past the living room and saw our little Sadie in by this tree that Linda had painted. And she wasn't saying anything, and I just watched her. Her finger went from herself down through her parents on the limb, down through the trunk, down into the roots, and down to this woman whose picture was there. And she got a big smile on her face, and she didn't even know I was there. And she said to herself, looking at this picture, I'm 1/16 from you. And I thought, man, that's what you want. Now, that child knows who she is. And that's the family narrative Linda's talking
You know,
about.
we were teaching a Sunday school class last week, and one of our members had a great idea, a memory game with the pictures of the ancestors on it, and then match the faces with the couples that go together. There's so many fun things you can do to get your kids involved and excited about a family
Memory
narrative.
game where they have to turn over two that match.
Yeah, they know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what?
Yeah, they know. You don't have to
I don't know.
explain. It's fine.
I'm forgetting whether they know the memory game. Now, another thing, Linda, tell them what those two things mean, because we've had so much fun with
You know,
that.
after our daughters left our home, I started thinking, did I tell them enough about how important motherhood is? Did we talk about it? Do they know how important that is? We need to talk about it. So I started having a little getaway for them once a year, and it was called the Mothers and Future Mothers of Eyre Realm. That's what-
M and FME. And I was sort of guilt-tripped into it, so I started Fathers and Future Fathers of Eyre Realm. But there's one of their recent meetings.
This
Linda
is
with
actually
her daughters.
a few years ago, and we were just in Switzerland last month, about 3 weeks ago, actually. And we didn't get any pictures in that. But it's so fun. There's always a baby that we have to take along with us, a baby or two that
How
are
many of
nursing.
you do that? You get together with your grown daughters, some of you people. Do you do that? Isn't that awesome? How many of you dads do it with some of your sons periodically? Not as many, but I you know, and Linda has these discussions and we read these
we have a
books.
book that we read, Gift from the Sea.
And
It's so
here's what we
awesome.
do. Here's what the boys do. We're all certified and we go diving. But look at my boys. That's my sons and sons-in-law. Bless their hearts. And, you know, when you get a thing like that, even for a weekend, man, do you learn a lot about your kids.
And you can just go out to dinner. You don't have to go on a vacation, but you can just organize a time at somebody's home. A lot of times we crammed into one of the kids' homes. One time we were in southern Utah, and our children had a teeny house, I mean like maybe 600 square feet, and we all smashed in there with sleeping bags, and one of the daughters-in-law brought a tent because she knew what the situation was going to be and slept in the backyard by herself. Anyway, it's so fun to get them together and
We
just
get
really
so excited,
talk about
but
it.
we're trying to we got a lot to cover, but Linda does this. This is, you know, you've all done this.
We're going to be talking
but
again a
it's
little
all
bit about
the
Grandma Camp.
ancestors. She makes the kids, this is our place at Bear Lake, and before they can do anything, they got to go gather rocks and bring them up to
Or
line the tennis
this is
court.
pulling weeds.
Pulling weeds.
My parents were both farm stock for as far as I can remember on both sides. And work was really important. So, man, we get those kids out there. I pay them a penny a weed. And that's a lot of weeds to pull. But there's a lot of weeds there, as you can see. And then I take them to the dollar store, and they can spend their money that they've earned from weed pulling on something.
And I what I started doing, you get a kick out of this. Some of these stories we tell, and they're put downs on ourselves, but I wanted to do something that was halfway as decent as Grammy Camp, which they all loved so much. And so I said, I want to get the kids together and tell them about grandfather's principles. No interest at all. Well, I want to tell them about grandfather's goals. No interest at all. And then I said, would you guys like to learn about some secrets? And suddenly there was some interest. And so we have about 10 of these now, and they've memorized them all. And look how simple they are. But most kids are waiting for someone to lead them, but they just don't know it yet. Number 2, joy is the purpose of life and a choice you make. Number 3, the Holy Ghost will help you with all your decisions, large and small. Number 4, good popularity comes from being nice to everyone, and it lasts. Bad popularity comes from only being nice to certain people, and it doesn't. And one of the funnest things for me is I'll get texts, although now it's more Instagrams and Facebook messages and so on, from grandkids, little grandkids, saying, we got this girl in our class she's just only nice to certain people. And I kind of want to tell her that her popularity won't last. But I'm trying to be nice to everyone. And you just sort of see the little light coming on in some of their minds, and it's so wonderful. And grandparents can do that better than parents because you've got a little social distance. You're not with them every day. You can be the sage. You can be the guru Wouldn't we all like to be gurus in our own family?
Now, we mostly do this long distance because really
Yeah.
our children are scattered everywhere. We have 3 in Europe, then we have them in Boston, New York, we have them in Orange County and Phoenix and just everywhere. So we try to gather them up in July, and it really is so fun to have them all together. Just for that little bit of time. But boy, I just take advantage of every minute that I have with those little grandchildren. We have a reunion, 3.5 days, and then I take the kids in small groups at a time for Grandma Camp, and we go to another little location very close up on the hill. And and in fact, I got this from my cousin, Rayma. My cousin's sitting down in the audience, who did this. It really is such a good idea because you have one-on-one time with those kids. Some of you can do that more easily because your children are closer, but some of you have children living far away. How many of you have kids far away? Far away.
Look at all that.
Oh, that's
a lot,
amazing.
yeah.
And how many of you have them just all pretty much in the area so that you can see them? And not as many, really.
So how many of you know texting? I hope you do. How many of you know Instagram? How many of you do Facebook? You got to go where they are, right? And if you don't know how to do some of those things, what do? Call one of the grandkids and say, I'd really like it if you'd be my tutor for Facebook. And then once you know it, you can do it.
But when
I'm teaching my kids to play tennis.
When I have him, oh yeah, he's doing tennis. And then when I have him, I like to teach him my favorite scriptures. Every one of them can do Helaman 5:12, just rip it off, that are over 8 years old, and repeat it with whenever it comes from the pulpit. And so there are so many fun things you can do. Ancestors. Also, I love music. I love art. So some years we do art with them. Some years we do music. This year I sent 20 little clips on Spotify. If you don't know who that is, you can do it on YouTube, iTunes too. But my kids taught me how to do this. We had 20 little clips from classical music pieces, and I gave them big rewards for anybody who could actually identify these pieces according to how many they knew. So at Grandma Camp was the big test, and it was so fun to see them just over in the corner practicing, listening, trying to remember. And we had one grandchild who got every single one of them right, all 20, including the composer and some extra little thing.
Now hang
about
on, Linda, hang on. Let's have a guilt check. Are you starting to feel a little guilty? Don't do it. Do not do it.
This is just ideas.
We're a little older than you. We've tried a few more
works
things.
And don't worry about it.
And we're only telling you the good part. We're not telling you any of the failures. No guilt. Just and not all these ideas will appeal to you, but some will, and when they do. Now look at this one for a minute. We put this same national poll we did. What would we like to give our kids? And those were the 6 leading answers. Think about that for a minute. Self-esteem, self-motivation, initiative, judgment, happiness. 5 things. The 5 leading things. That's what, if I had a magic wand and you're my daughter and I wave it over your head, I'm going to give you those 5 things, okay? What's the problem with that? Look at those 5 things. Yeah, that's close, but what's the even more basic problem? I want to give my kids those 5 things.
You can't give it.
None of those can
You're
be
right.
given.
Yeah.
That's why so many of them start with self, right? Those have to be developed. So I want you, for this hour, to look at parenting and homes and grandparenting as creating the environment where kids can earn those 5 things that we want them to have so very, very much. So I'm going to go through this really quick with you. Why is entitlement so bad? Because initiative and motivation goes away, gratitude, work satisfaction, delayed gratification. They don't know what these things mean if they're entitled. So children with an attitude of entitlement, they think they want, you said it a minute ago, their motivation and their ability to cope are destroyed. In modern society, we give kids license too soon. Yeah, you can go, go ahead, take the car. We give them license too soon and responsibility too late. What a big difference. Now, let's go quickly. Where do these attitudes come from? Oh, it's the government's fault, right? All these handouts. Let's blame the government. It's credit cards and banks. They make credit easy. They're causing entitlement. Oh, it's the media. It's all those ads that show us all the things we should want. Well, let's blame those 3, right? I'm sorry, folks, but it comes down to number 4. We are the only ones that can solve this. What should we give them? Oh, now we're really feeling guilty. We should be giving them responsibility. Is that an easy thing to give? Sure, it is. I just say to my 2 daughters here, I'm giving you 2 responsibility now, girls. I expect you to start behaving differently. And nothing happens. Nothing happens because that's not really the thing we need to give them. I get, too fast, go back a little. And what we're ending up giving them instead is that, and nothing destroys like entitlement. But what you want to give, well, you did this already. We'll just skip past some of these because you're so smart. And we'll go to the fact that what you really ought to be giving them is ownership. Because when kids feel they have equity in something, like they're not just your little pawns in your family, like they really are owners in the family, ownership is what motivates you. I'll ask you a question to illustrate it. How many of you have ever taken your rental car through the car wash? Anyone ever done that? Why did you do that? Oh, okay. Well, that doesn't happen anymore. So why do 99% of people never take a rental car through the car wash? They don't own it. They don't own it. It's not yours. We had a little fender bender, and one of our kids right in the back seat said, don't worry, Dad, it's a rental. Have you ever seen an apartment building converted over to condos? That's really interesting. The same people still living there, but now instead of being renters, they bought their unit. What happens to the building? Oh my gosh. Painted, remodeled, window boxes. I mean, the minute someone feels... Now, does that apply to children? Quick story. Josh, one of our children, years ago, comes home from school in the winter. And we live in Salt Lake City, so it's cold. And he's missing an article of his clothing. Can you guess what he's missing? Of course, you'd say his coat, but wrong. He's missing one of his shoes. And he comes walking in like this, and I happen to be there, and I'm like, he's got a little sopping, wet, frozen foot. I'm like, Josh, where's your shoe, man? He's about 8. He says, well, Dad, the snow's melting, and Chad and I, my friend, we needed a boat to float, down the ditch where the water goes. And the shoe was great. It was just going down there. And I'm like, Josh, where is it now? Well, where the ditch goes under the road? Well, it went in there, Dad, but it never came out. And I'm like, and I said the most exactly prototypical thing that parents say. Do you know how much that shoe cost? And Josh, who's kind of a innocent little conversational kid's like, no. And then he finally, I'm glaring at him, and he finally gets that I'm kind of mad, so he gets a little mad back at me. Do any of your kids do that? He looks at me and he says, well, it was actually your shoe, and I mean, you bought it for you, and now you'll probably have to buy another one, won't you? I mean, it's just like, And the minute I get over my desire to, I won't say, I just realize he's taught me the key lesson. No, why would he feel ownership of that shoe? He didn't pick it out. He didn't work for it. He didn't sacrifice anything. So it's under the bridge. What does he care? And I walk in his room and there's his toys broken on the floor. There's his clothes under the bed. No ownership. And out of that one funny little experience came this whole entitlement trap book. I mean, there were other inputs too, but that was sort of the most personal one. And we're starting to realize what well-meaning parents who love their kids and want to give them everything, and instead they're creating this entitlement attitude. They say, oh, we got an allowance. We're teaching our kids to manage money because every week we give them $20 and then they learn to manage that money. What's the problem? They didn't do anything for that $20. Now, some have altered that, obviously, and made it into a job, and that's good.
Now, honey, you have to be careful because a
be
lot
careful.
of these people have given allowances.
I know.
Right? I got an allowance
We're
when
not
I
doing
was a
guilt.
kid. But I will have to say, and I'm worried about these dozen or so people that don't have chairs back there.
Yeah, I
Can
wish
we
could
get
them
some more?
chairs? Is there any way to get any more chairs
There's
in here?
plenty of room up here if we can.
Can they come up here and sit on the sides? Is that going to bother anybody? They're not in the aisles. If you want to, come on up, folks.
Sit?
Well, you
On the
just know
floor?
that's an invitation. Yeah.
Well,
But anyway,
they
just
were going to bring some more. Sorry. There's one chair right here.
here's
Yeah,
one.
absolutely.
Come on, let's have one person sit here. We want you to be comfortable. Come on. Sit on the sides, whatever you want. Anyway, I'm just going to wrap this up because it's simple, and then Linda's going to go on to the next thing. We're going to try to cover at least a little of all that you said.
Well-
Ownership is the antidote for entitlement.
You do need to spend a little time on this. We can talk about this because.
Well, we'll
this
go
is-
fast and we'll get your questions. We're going to stop at the end of each thing and talk a little about each part we've covered. Here's a guy who followed the Entitlement Trap book. He got a great big chest and called it a family bank. And he put a big lock on it. You can't see it there. And he put money in the box. These are Canadians. That's why the money looks a little funny. And he said to his kids, okay, no more allowance day. When it comes to Saturday, it's going to be payday. And how much money you get will be determined by how many of these pegs you get in. The first peg is here's 4 jobs I have that I don't want anymore. I have the job of getting you up on time and getting you to have your breakfast and getting you out the door on time for school. I don't want that job anymore. I'm giving it to you. And if you do it without me motivating you, you can put in your first peg. When you come home from school, I got another job I don't like very well. That's getting you to do your music practice and getting you to do your homework. I don't want that job anymore. I'm giving it to you. And if you'll do it, you can put in the second peg. And then the third one, I don't like cleaning this whole house. I know you take care of your own room, but how about the hallway? We all use it. From now on, you check that hallway every day. And if it's a problem, you take care of it and you can put the third peg in. By the way, we tried this with little Eli. Remember Eli, the little kid? Eli didn't like the word job or chore, but he loved basketball. And I said, Eli, do you know what a zone defense is? He said, oh, yeah, zone defense. You don't guard a person. You have an area of the court, and you be sure nothing bad happens in your area. Right, Eli, the hall is your zone. Don't let anything bad happen there. Oh, okay, I can do that. And suddenly he's into it. So you do that, you can put your third peg in. The fourth peg, got one more job I don't like. I hate the job of getting you in bed on time. I am so tired of that job. I'm turning it over to you. If you'll do it without me, if I remind you, forget it. But if you do it, you put in that fourth peg. Now Saturday comes for this family, and they go back to their bank, and the dad says, hey, I like it when dads do this because it gets dads really involved. Hey, the bank's open. Come on in. And by the way, each day those kids in a little slot, you can't see it there, but on the top of that is a little slot, and they write down 1, 2, 3, or 4 how many pegs they got that day, right? How many of those 4 things they did. And they have to get you, the parent, to initial it, and then they put it in that box. And some might say 4, some might say 3, and you say, well, how do you know? How do you enforce it? You know if they did it. And if they put a 4 on there and you say, I don't think I heard you practice the piano today. Did you have the mute on? Why? Oh, sorry, and they'll make a 3, And so but they get their thing, and now, Dad, payday, bank's open. It's so fun to see these kids pull those slips out, add them up, and how much they get that week is in direct proportion to how many of those things they remembered to do and did on their own, their initiative, their motivation, without you being involved. And now, if you're going to introduce this to your kids, the fun way to do it is say, hey, you know that allowance we used to give you, that's kid stuff. We're going to promote you to a family economy where you will have certain responsibilities. You'll keep track of them. You'll get paid. It'll be a lot more than your allowance ever was if you do well. And guess what? You're going to buy all your own stuff. I'm not going to say no to you anymore. When you come to me and say, Dad, I want a new iPhone 6S, I'll say, fine. Let's look in your bank account, see if you got enough. And if you do, you can go buy it.
But I do have to interject.
Oh, there is one. Yeah,
here.
I used a bad example.
You do not
on
want
that.
a child to buy all of the phone. You want to retain at least 51%.
I should have said gym shoes.
Because because it is so important that you have control over that phone. And we have a daughter who has a website. How many of you are familiar with 71 Toes?
I think a lot
There's
of you
always
read
a
that.
few in the audience.
We'll put that up later.
We'll put it up in a minute. But she got a contract from a friend For whenever a child receives a phone, they have to read through this contract. And just to make it short, and you can actually go to 71toes.com and just type in
We'll show you that later, though. Don't worry. We'll
contract,
give you the
yeah.
address.
But anyway, it really is so fun because, for one thing, it says, all right, if you ever see mom and dad on the screen, you must answer the phone immediately. If you have passwords, I must know all the passwords. I must know every way to get a hold of you. This phone is really a privilege. We're grateful for you to have a privilege, mostly so that we can know where you are and what you're doing. But you have to turn the phone in. I mean, this is depending how old your kids are, but they have their kids turn in the phone at 8 o'clock every night. Is kept in a special place so that they're not going to their rooms, they're not texting all night, they're not staying up all night. So everybody understands that this is the contract. When you have a phone, and I know a lot of you kids have a phone, you think, oh, I should have thought of that. You can still do it.
You can do it.
You can still do it. It's really very successful.
Well, and actually, this is, I probably gave the wrong example because it's the one thing you don't want the kids to just buy on their own. Well, there are other things. I mean, some people say, well, if they earn their own money and they can buy anything they want, what do I do when my daughter wants to buy a immodest halter top or something? Well, we're going to get to family laws in a minute, but one thing you want to remember, the family economy never supersedes the family laws. The family laws are there, and they can buy something that doesn't violate the laws. But what Linda said is a perfect example of how things spin off from this. You say, look, you got your own money, you can buy your own phone, but guess what? Good news and bad news. The good news is I'm going to pay 51% on that thing for you, you lucky kid. You only need 49%. The bad news is I'm the majority owner, and I'll decide the rules on how that phone is used. Be strong. One of the problems we see with a lot of moms especially, they want their kids to like them so much and to be their friend. And believe me, your daughter or your son doesn't need you for a friend. They will later as they're older, and but what they need you for is a mom and a dad, and strength and conviction will give them a feeling of security. They'll moan and groan about it, but deep inside, that's where their security comes from.
Another thing that we set up, and we are going to just open this to question and answer before we go on to the next section, and that is when we gave them the money they earned, there was another family law, and that is you had to give 10% away.
To a church, to a charity.
Whatever, what makes sense for you. 20% they must save. They must save. And 70% they could do. Now, our kids made up their own rules. We had one kid who's still
Saved
to this
more than
day.
that, yeah.
I mean, he gives away 30% and saves 40% and uses the other 30% for himself. I mean, every kid, but that was the bare minimum. And it's amazing what's happened in the long run. Our second daughter said to us, if we hadn't done this when we got married, this 10, 20, 70, 10, 20, 70, if we hadn't been saving that 20%, we never would have had enough money for a down payment on a house, ever. So it was a fast rule that they carried into their marriages.
What do you think might be something that would incentivize them to save 20% and leave it in the bank?
Well, what we do with our kids is anything they save, we match, just like a 401k.
Wow, that's an
But
awesome
they
incentive.
can only use it for college, mission, or marriage, or
Yeah,
whatever.
that's beautiful. What a lot of families we've worked with on this do is they institute interest on the part that's saved in the bank. Sometimes very high interest because they want that to grow because they earmark it for the college or for the mission or whatever they do. And so the kids, in a way, they don't want to put the money in there because they can't spend it. But in another way, it's so interesting when kids can see that that's going to grow. They're fascinated. A lot of 8-year-olds are fascinated by interest. Wait, Dad, you mean all I do is leave it there, and at the end of the quarter, you add? We ended up paying in our bank 10% per quarter interest. This is almost
they
like
said,
a matching.
We started with how about 6%, and then our little 7-year-old says, no, I can't do that. We have to have 10% because then all you have to do is just move the decimal over. So we okay, all right, we're with that, but we gave him huge interest.
So think what questions you have on this. We'll pause for a minute because this is the heart of the entitlement trap thing. But I want to tell you one more thing. It starts as a little game. Now we've monitored families who've done this for 10 or 15 years. It grows into something much more in the game. A lot of families set up an LLC. They put that money in there. The kids can access it when they're older, but only for certain things. One family says you can borrow out of the family bank a down payment for your first home with no interest. and we'll figure out the payback schedule. And the other one says, you can borrow it for college beyond what you can get. And again, now the kid is not saying, Dad didn't pay for my college. I paid for my college. I borrowed the money out of my family bank. It's my education. I'm doing it. Our daughter, I told some of you this the other day. Did I tell this in the meeting? I don't think so. Our daughter is away at this expensive liberal arts college, and she's just written out her own check, because once the kids turn about 16, we advise parents, end the family bank for them. Take the money out of that family bank, which in some cases we've heard is $15,000 or $20,000, because they've been saving it and they've been getting interest from you, but they perceive it as theirs because it's their money and their interest. Go down to Charles Schwab, open up a bank account for you. We're not worried about you. You've been writing checks and taking care of your money for 8 years. You'll be fine. And anyway, our daughter, in her first week at this expensive school, had written out a check for her tuition. And it was a big check. I mean, I was there with her, and she wrote it out, and her little hand was shaking. She'd never written that many zeros, and it was coming out of her Schwab account, and we'd struck a deal that she was going to pay 30% of the tuition. And by the way, they don't need to, there's a lot of things that are more expensive. They just need skin in the game. They don't have to pay the whole thing. They just need enough that they've got equity. So she says, Dad, she hands this in, she says, that's a lot of money. And I said, well, where do you see the one I got to write for the other 70%? And then she looked up at me, and she's 18 years old with a tear on her cheek, and she said, Dad, I'm going to work my tail off at this school. And it wasn't about anything I'd taught her. It was her conclusion, because that was a big investment. So we're talking ownership now, which starts out as a little game. I own my socks, I own my clothes, I hang them up. Now we're talking about ownership of education. What would you give to have a kid have ownership of education, ownership of choices, ownership of values, ownership of decisions? That's what we're working toward.
Now, we know a lot of you have done even better, had better ideas on this than we have, but what are your questions? No question is
or comments.
or comments, yeah.
Do you see what
or
we're
something
getting at
you've
here?
done that's worked even better.
Yeah.
And I'll try to be a runner here so that
We'll
everybody
just
can
take
hear.
maybe 5 minutes, and then we'll move on to the next thing.
Do like clothing, because I have little kids, and so I actually read your daughter's blog. I found it one night when I was like totally struggling, and my husband works late hours, and I was like, how am I going to get these kids to listen to me? And I found her blog, and I totally think it was an answer to prayer, because we've been doing the zones. But I just was curious how you get them to want to like save to buy their clothes. Because as soon as my 9-year-old gets her $9 a week or whatever for doing her things, she just wants to spend her money on Legos or whatever. I just
Three
was
things
curious
really
how you did
quickly.
that.
Number one, don't
Yeah.
start them on this till they're about 8 years old.
Yeah,
Before-
and that's important. Although they can start earning a little truck that they saw at the store and make little circles
Have
around
little
things
star
they have to do.
charts and things,
So
but-
when they've earned that little truck, that's fine. But don't put them on this serious economy until they're 7 or 8, so they can add and subtract and be responsible. But let me just say too, before you go on, that
Sorry.
they're really, it's amazing. They're all going to do this differently. We have a son who could care less about clothes. I took him to the DI, or Goodwill, if those of you who aren't around, for their school clothes, his school clothes every year, and he was fine with it. But then he started loving electronics. He loved the computer games and so on, so that became important to him to have those things.
But number
so
two-
every
number
child's
two-
going to be different.
Sorry, number two, make sure you're paying them enough that they really can buy their clothes if they max out and get all the pegs. And remember, it's not a perfect system. There's certain things they'll never buy. Your kids, I swear to you, will never buy underwear. I don't know why.
Just keep buying
there's
their
certain
underwear.
things you've
They'll
gotta do.
never buy underwear.
And be
Yeah.
patient. Be patient, because some kids are on this like a hawk, and they earn every penny and they love it. Others, different personalities, much slower, like the boy Linda mentions. When he started wanting a computer, he kicked into gear. He got everything, So be patient, let it take its time and work and design. And when we give you the website, it'll go into far more detail on this.
Okay,
Another
and
question.
we're going to have shorter answers.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Right?
Okay, no.
Okay, so other questions?
30-second answers.
How much do you recommend for allowances?
There is no allowance.
question.
Forget allowance. Never do it again.
Yeah,
Payday.
how much do you recommend? The
Payday.
answer to that is figure out how much you're spending on them now,
Yeah.
and you'll be amazed at how much you're spending on them. And I mean, we never had them pay for their own music lessons or their own lunch at school and all those kind of things. But on the things that I want things, and then give them the possibility of earning that much. But guess what? You save money because they never really make as much as they think they're going to. So just figure out, it'll be quite a lot, but at the same time, they may or may not earn it.
And if you're a little timid and you want to start small, just say, first we're just going to pay you enough that you can buy your own sort of elective things like toys or gadgets or whatever. And if you do well, we'll give you a raise and you can start picking your own clothes. But go far. Don't pussyfoot about it, because the bigger it is, the more kids will pay attention to it.
Okay, what other questions?
One more question.
Over here.
Yes.
So I have a question. I have 8 children, and the oldest is 19, the youngest is 2. So the middle kids like this and caught on to this because we've done this, but the older kids already had a bank account, and
Right.
so writing a check sort of thing, they already have a bank account, so we didn't know how to do both at the same time. Do we just focus on the ones that want to do it with the bank for the family versus their own bank accounts? So.
There's a different way to do it for teenagers, Linda. Linda's really the master of this.
Well, it really is, a lot of times people say, wait, my kids have never had any training at all to take care of money, and they're 16 and they're leaving in 2 years, and people are going to start sending them credit cards in the mail, and they're not going to know what to do with them. We said, look, perfect timing. Just say, you are only going to be with us for 2 more years, and then you're going to be out in the world on your own, and this is the time we're going to teach you how to handle money. So we're starting now, and then you go through. And it sounds like your kids are responsible anyway.
But if they've already
figured out a lot of that.
If they've already
out.
got a bank account, just say, great, we're just going to institute a little way to teach you some additional things. We'll pay you the money. You put it in your regular account. And make the jobs commensurate with their age, the things that you feel they need and the things you really need help with. And create this atmosphere, create this wonderful real world microcosm where you're saying, look, we're an entity. We're a basic institution, like we've heard a million times in this conference. A certain amount of money comes into this family. Those who do part of the work should get part of the profit. And work together as a team, and treat the older kids as mature. You don't introduce this the same way to a 16-year-old as you would an 8-year-old. With the 8-year-old, it's like playing Monopoly, only it's more fun and they get real rewards. With a 16-year-old, it's like crisis time. You're going to be leaving in 2 years. Let's use this system to make sure you're savvy enough to go out into the big real world.
Anybody
Great
got a
questions.
great idea that has worked really well in your house that you want to add?
How many of you have done something like this, or you're working on it?
Yeah.
Something to get kids earning. Great.
It
That's
takes
a lot of you.
thinking about, and parenting has to be deliberate. You just have to think, what do our kids need? That's
And
important.
one more thing, and a lot of you do this, get them out of their bubble. What Linda said about giving 10% away, we'll do that partly. But are many of you aware of, there's a lot of NGOs now that'll take your family to a third world country for a week and build a school or build a house for Habitat for Humanity. These things cost less than a trip to Disneyland. And you end up watching your kids do something for a little family in poorest Mexico or Bolivia. This was in Africa. We got hooked on this. We started doing it every time we had a vacation.
Well, some are more expensive than others. Some, not always Disneyland might trump some. I hate this picture, though. I look like I've been electrocuted. Actually, I have kind of been electrocuted by the great joy that we found in serving these people. This was life-changing for our kids. It was totally life-changing.
Remember the little Eli? He was 16 when Eli's there somewhere. Where is he? Oh, that's Eli right here holding this little baby. And we came home from that, and I'll never forget on the plane, Eli looked at me and he said, Dad, do you even realize how many blessings we have? Now, I'd been telling him how many blessings we had for 16 years. The day he got it was in Africa when he realized. And I tell you, for 6 months, he was a different kid. Then he started to slip
And you
back.
gotta do it again.
And we had to take him on another.
And you don't have to go on a big expedition. You can go to the homeless shelter.
Right,
I mean, that's
right.
where we started when our kids were little and had some fabulous experiences at the homeless center. No matter
so-
where you live, you can find
So
out.
that's the book, which you can get, obviously, but we're going to, in a minute, give you a website that'll help you decide whether you need the whole book or whether you just need a website. Now, let's skip a couple of things. Here's an interesting thing. We think preschoolers, your focus should be teaching joy. And a lot of you know about Joy School, and Joy School has just gone crazy. There's 300,000 people in the world that have done Joy School now. And it's the whole theory of it is don't push them on academics. Let them learn how to be happy. Then, though, when they're elementary school, game changer. Now it's responsibility. Now it's the entitlement trap. Now it's the bank. And then what do you think with when they get a little older? It all shifts to values.
No, I don't think we have this anywhere. So if any of you would like to try Joy School with your preschoolers, just go to joyschools.com or
Well, we got a
valuesparenting.com.
website. We'll show-
I guess.
we'll show you a
We're just
website to
launching
get
a
to
brand
it.
new 2.0, and so easy, makes it so simple.
Some of you know, don't you? Physical joys like the joy of the earth, mental joys, social joys, emotional joys. And you grandparents can really get involved in Joy School too. It's so much fun. And there's some more of them. And then the values program, all it is basically, and again, we're coming to a slide that'll have this website, is just focus on one value every month. Because the mistake a lot of parents make is they're trying to teach all the values all the time, and it's confusing to the kids. But when you're on one, like what month is it right now? You're in October, you're teaching the value of self-reliance, and that's all you're talking about. You're focused on it. Now everything you see starts to be a method for you. Yes, sir. Right.
The ages,
Yeah, we're using American terminology. So joy is below 5. You know, it's before
Preschool.
American kids start
Preschool.
school. Joy, joy, joy. Then 5 to 12, responsibility. And then shift your focus to values.
to values, yeah. Well, this actually is funny. There's a little story that we probably should tell them. This book came out just as something really tragic happened in England. 2, I think, 9-year-olds found a 4-year-old in a department store and killed him, took him off and killed him. And Oprah was very popular at that time, and she said, "Where are our values? Where are our values?" And he said, look up what we know about values. And our book had just come out, like 2 weeks before that. And so we were eating dinner one night, and the phone rang. They said, "Hi, this is the Oprah Show." And we said, "Yeah, hi. Who is this really? Really?" I said, "No, this really is the Oprah Show." So they came out and did some B-roll, did every one of the values, and it was an amazing experience. We went back and took 3 of our kids were doing missionary service at the same time, so they were gone. But we took the 6 little ones. And I didn't think they were going to be in the audience. I mean, I thought they were going to be in the audience. I didn't think they were going to be on the stage. And she got there and she said, "Oh, no, we're having all your kids on the stage. They'll all be mic'd up. We
That
want
was
to
a
talk
heart
to them."
attack.
Oh, my gosh. Eli and Charity were sitting right together. They had never spent an hour in their lives without breaking out in a fight. I was so horrified. I did not sleep all night the night before. So it was kind of funny, though, because we had just been doing a book tour, and we'd been doing Phil Donahue, and Eli came with us, along with 2 other kids, and he wanted to say something. The whole time he just kept raising his hand, and Phil never called on him. And on his way out, he was about 9 years old, and he was so amazed. "Oh, that Phil Donahue just likes to hear himself talk." He was so mad. And so when we got to Oprah, who was so kind and good to all the kids, she was darling. And afterwards, he just went right up to her and wrapped his arm around her leg and said, "Oh, Oprah, you are so much better than that Phil Donahue." And
Oprah loved him because they were in a ratings war at the time, and so she gave him a little tour of the studio. But I mean, that was a unique experience. She had us on the whole hour. She was so into it. It looked like an infomercial. She kept holding up her book, "You people need to buy this." And it took 2 days from the 23 million who watched that show, and the book was #1 on the New York Times. It's all we owe it all to Oprah. But also, we owe it all to the fact that every parent we've ever met has this yearning to have his kids learn good values. And
Yeah.
it just was the right thing at the right time. But this is all it is. It's just one value a month. Oh, there is one more thing. On the website we're going to give you, we had, here's a funny thing. You have a number one book. People come out of the woodwork. Can we do a video? Can we animate? Can we do this? We got 100 goofy proposals. And then finally a group of artists and play sort of actors came and said, and this really got to me, they said, we don't want to do a video. Kids have enough screens in their lives. We want to do an audio that is so infectious that they will see it on the monitors of their brains. And I said, you're my man. And they did this thing, which we're going to show you how to get, where each month there's a story about the value and about how, and it's so engrossing that kids will put it on their iPad or whatever and listen to it all month long. And you're getting sick of it. You can't wait for the next month to get on to the next value, but it helps teach it.
Well, it's children's language. They just identify with these. Some wonderful musicians took over and writers and so on. We don't even take credit for that. They did such a good job with
Take
that.
a picture of that slide, because that's your homework. We're going to go on here in a minute, but I didn't want to go any further without saying that if you will go to those 3 sites, you'll make us feel better, because we're trying to cram way too much in an hour and 45 minutes, but you'll find everything on one of those 3, and the vast majority of it is free. That's our goal, is to try to make everything free. We think parents need a free interchange, and the middle one you'll find interesting. The minute a book goes below a certain level, I don't know if you knew this, authors can get the copyright back from the publisher. Now, we've had Simon & Schuster and Random House and McGraw-Hill and so on. And when these books sag a little after a few years, and the interesting thing, they're parenting books. It's not like they're outdated. Nothing changes with parenting. The principles are the same. But we get the copyrights back. And Eyre's free book, we slap them on there. And they're free. You just click on them, and there they are. You can read them. And I think 25 of our books are now completely free. And our goal is to make all of them free before too long. That's why we're going to give you all a book today. But the top one is sort of the mother lode side. I mean, it's where the talk about sex is. It's where the economy is that we've just talked about. It's where the family laws are. It's where the family traditions are. And you can just go after that. And it's almost overwhelming. I want to warn you, what you don't want to do is look at values parenting and say, oh my gosh, we got to do all this stuff right now, because it's not possible. Just pick 1 or 2 things that are your needs right now for your family and forget all the rest of it. Come back to it later when you might need something else. And then the last one's kind of my favorite, because as Linda intimated, some of our kids, bless their hearts, they've picked up our baton, and they're so much better than we are. Our daughter Sarah, and any of you know about Power of Moms? A few of you. She started this online mothers group, and they've now got 60,000 moms that are on there exchanging ideas and so on. And I'll tell you what that has to do with this. And our daughter, 71 Toes, one that some of you read, 2 million hits a month on her blog. It's unbelievable. But we got so tired of trying to give all their addresses, we started this irrealm.com, and you'll love it when you go on there, because all it is a picture of our family, but you can click on each person. So if you click on Shawnee, it goes to her blog. If you click on Saren, it goes to Power of Moms. If you click on us, it goes to Values Parenting.
This is a proud father.
I'm so
that
proud.
Worked on that for a long time. Yeah,
Because I want to fade away and have these kids
we are truly blessed.
Be the one. But let's talk about traditions for a minute. You heard the leaf story the other day, right? Do any of you need any more evidence that traditions are what holds families together? You've got them in your own family. Our only suggestion to you is formalize them. Put them on a big chart or in a big book, or have a monthly calendar that shows the traditions for that month. Kids love this, and it ties them in.
It really does. I mean, we had one other one that we loved, and the crazier it is, the better the kids like it. And you can do it for grandparents. You can do it for anybody. The tradition was floating the cake. On August 12th, we floated the cake, and usually we were up at Bear Lake, where I was born and raised up there, and we have a little place there. And so every year we'd rig up some kind of thing and just send that cake out on a floaty. And, sometimes it got wet, sometimes it was wavy, but we just couldn't wait to float the cake. And just to show you how long it lasts, when the family started leaving and going on their own lives and so on, this girl, Sadie, who was her birthday, and then now this little granddaughter was also born on August 12th, which was very convenient, but that's a terrible picture. But
Sorry, that's so blurry.
But this girl was just getting ready for missionary service, and she was at the missionary training center, and people sent her notes that day saying, I floated a cupcake in the sink today for you. I got some cake and put it in the bathtub for you. And it just really is something that lasts forever. You think about that person, you know how much you love them on that
So formalize those traditions. We do it now, the Leaf one, these are grandkids, that tradition lives on. And don't forget the family laws that we talked a little about the other night. In fact, we love you guys, and we're feeling very relaxed with you. I'll tell you something, Linda. Did you mention the other night about? I can't remember. We've been speaking in so many places. We made a mistake on family laws. We thought you could just have as many as you wanted.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, we started when our first two kids were 2 and 3. So okay. In our family meeting, nominations are now open for family laws. And so the 3-year-olds, I know, never hit other little girls. Well, yeah, that's a good idea. Let's write that down. And then the 2-year-old's like, I know, never plug in plugs with a fork. Because she just headed for one the night before with a fork. And so, oh, yeah, that's a good idea. Well, we just kept adding and adding, and 5 years later, finally, our 8-year-old came to us by then now, and she said, Mom, we have 33 family laws. In the whole Bible, there's only 10 commandments. Come on, we got to simplify this. We got to make this easier. So we came up with 5 one-word laws and a consequence for breaking the law.
And we got it down to, they still couldn't remember them, so Linda wrote a song. Would you like to hear the family laws song? Just for fun.
Oh, my God.
We would open our family meetings or our family home meeting every single week by singing.
Now, wait. Keep in mind that I am a music major. This is really a sophisticated song. Wait till you hear it. Okay.
Peace, respect, asking, order, obedience. Peace, respect, asking, order, obedience. Peace, respect, asking, order, obedience. These are our family laws. And we figured about the 200th time the kids sang that, they would remember. But the key is they all had a distinct, clear consequence that the kids knew. Just give you one example.
Some of you will know about this. This is called the repenting bench.
This is the consequence for number 1, peace. If you're fighting with your brother,
you go to the repenting bench. And actually, you can do this on the top stair. You can put this to 2 chairs put together. But when 2 kids were fighting, and as you can imagine, with 9 kids running around all the time, somebody was always fighting with somebody, and we were so exhausted of trying to figure out who was right and who was wrong and who should have what punishment. So we just said, okay, we are giving you ownership of your arguments. This is what we're going to do, and we're going to practice in a family meeting. Okay, Eli and Charity, you have the argument you had this afternoon. Come and sit on these chairs, and then we're going to work it out.
We're going to role play this.
They tried to have the argument. They get the giggles, but they go to the bench, and we say, when you sit there, you have to figure out what you did wrong, not what the other person did wrong. And, Eli's like, I did nothing. I did nothing. She hit me for nothing. No, it takes 2 to tangle. No, you did something. Figure it out. And you cannot leave this bench until you figure it out. So they figure it out. They call us over one at a time. And then before they leave, they have to say, I'm sorry. Will you forgive me? I'll try not to do it again. And give each other a little hug. It was just
Eli finally learned the word provoke. And then he could get off the bench really fast. We'd send him to the bench and say, sorry, I provoked her, and then he'd be ready to go. So, and he was always right. But you get the idea. We're just giving you the one example, but just simple laws with simple consequences that actually work.
Let me just say quickly, this repenting bench has anybody tried a repenting bench here? There, 1 or 2.
It works.
It really is so fun. It takes you out of the position of being the referee, no more. But the best long-term effect is all our kids are best friends now that they've grown up. It's so awesome.
Just a couple more things I want to mention quickly, and then I want to get any questions you have. But one of the best things you can do is help your kids make decisions in advance. The research shows that when kids make a big mistake, it's because they didn't think it through beforehand. They got mowed down by peer pressure. They just never considered it. So you get a journal, and in the back of the journal you say you can decide now. You're only 10 or you're 12 or whatever you are. You can decide in advance certain things. What would they be? And they'll come up with things. I'm going to graduate from college. I'm not going to smoke. I'm not going to do drugs. And here's the interesting thing. Instead of you being, oh, good, write that down. That's wonderful. Write it down. Make it big. You want to be like the devil's advocate almost. You want to be, well, let's do a little case study about that before you write it down. You say you'll never try smoking. Well, you never try this. What if you're in a situation and you describe it and the kids are all there and everyone's done it and you're feeling, what will you say? And you actually role play it till they know what they're going to do, what they're going to say. Then they write it in this little book and they initial it and put a date on it. On October 30th, 2015, I decided what I would say, what I would do.
So powerful. Our kids, I mean, there's no guarantee that it's absolutely going to work, but it is so powerful. We start about 10, 11, 12 when they're, Richard says, no, you can do it when you're 8.
You start when they're 8.
I know, but you know what happens? They write down, I will have a puppy.
Oh, yeah, they could do that.
And that, they may not fly with the parents. You got to figure out what really will work. But it is so powerful because they write at the back of that journal decisions I have made in advance. And then they are the ones that decide what they're going to write. Decisions I have made in advance, and sometimes we have time to go through the possibilities. But
I'm dying to get to your questions. We're going to finish this in 5 minutes. Open this to questions, but a couple more. You get the idea on decisions on advance. This one I just want to touch for a minute. In all our work, I can tell you, parents do a lot better job talking to their kids about drugs and about substance abuse and about violence than they do about sex. Do it. Have the courage. When you go to valuesparenting.com, there's an actual dialogue. You can print it out and hold it under the table if you want. And it says what you say and what the child will probably say, and then what you say. And the kid might say this, and he might say this, and you say this or this. It's like a flow chart. So whatever he says, you're covered. And just do it, folks, and do it early. Now, if you've got older kids, you can still have the talk with them. There's a version for older kids on there that's written a little differently. But for an 8-year-old, it is the most beautiful, wonderful thing because it's positive. It's not about the STDs and all the dangers and so on. It's about how wonderful sex is when you do it right with the right person at the right time. Yeah, so you wouldn't have to do it at all.
Be a good
there you go.
Idea, yeah.
Or you send your kids over. We'll go through this.
I don't think he's got any kids. He's wondering if he could hear the audio version.
I do want to say that here's to illustrate that. Just really quickly, Random House was our publisher, and they wanted this book on teaching children values. We brought it to them. It had 12 chapters, one of which was called Chastity. They called us in, the senior editor, and said, we love the book, we're excited to publish it, but you got to take out chapter 6. And I said, what, you want us to take out chastity? Yes. It's an old-fashioned word, and it makes everyone feel guilty. And I said, we're in an age of AIDS, and of all, you want us to write a book on values and take that out? And she said, yes. I said, can we change the wording a little? Will you be okay? No, we want it out. We walked out on Random House. It was, in a way, honestly, it was in a way the proudest moment of my life, but it was also, we looked at each other out on the sidewalk on 6th Avenue in New York, and I said, Linda, we just walked out on Random House. Most authors would give their eye teeth, and Linda put her arm around me and said we did the right thing. Now, here's what's interesting. It took our agent 5 years to find the right publisher. It turned out to be Simon & Schuster. They published the book. Oprah liked it. We've told you the story.
And
Goes
they said
to number 1.
The one we like the best is chapter 6.
Yeah, that was the most
a
popular
lot had
chapter.
Changed in the culture.
The one people needed most. And so I picked up the phone and called the senior editor at Random House. No, I didn't do that. I wanted to so badly, though, and she was going to answer the phone, and I was just going to say, because believe me, they know what's number one, right, on the list. I was going to say, na, 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 na. But I didn't do that. But anyway,
Okay,
you
so
get the idea.
Let's just do
Okay.
these last little pictures. Oh, I don't think we have time to do.
You can teach them goals. These are some goal charts from kids. That's sort of the bottom line. Every question you asked, every concern you said, is accounted for in one of these things. If you have a legal system, an economy, and a set of traditions, that will impact every single thing that you talked about.
Now, we want to show you about
just
our
for entertainment.
a little family reunion. The tradition we started the last 2 or 3 years, and we got this from an in-law, and that is that we have something called the fear factor. And we have a son, this Eli, ended up going to Japan on his mission and marrying the most awesome girl. And honestly, he calls us more often than anybody else. He takes such good care of us. He turned out to be a great kid. Anyway, so he brings the fear factor food because he served in Japan. And so he brings this weird food. Oh my gosh, it's so awesome. We were just in Japan last week and I found some eel bone. Now don't go faster. Okay, so this is how excited the kids are because we showed them the prizes. I mean, they were like dollar store prize. The big prize was a little bigger, but they were so excited. Yes, I'm going to win. I'm going to win.
We can eat anything. I'm going to win. I'm going to win.
Okay, and so this is what they looked like when they found out what they had to eat.
And this is what they looked like when they actually started eating it.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Now remember, this is all real food. It's not going to hurt them.
Just like, oh, this was a little egg. You just could not eat hard-boiled eggs. A quail egg. Look at this. Oh my gosh.
Oh, those expressions were priceless, I'll tell you. And these are the ones who'd been dropped out and laughing at the others who are still trying to
The
eat.
parents had more fun, I think, than the kids did.
And there's
So-
the winner. He
Here's
ate
the
it
winner.
all.
Who was our pickiest eater? Believe it or not, pickiest eater. He won. So we just want to close. We're not doing that.
Now, we're not doing this. There's one more thing you can get on the website is a secret code for family communication. And you can also get family night lessons. There's a thing on there where you teach a value each week in your family lesson. So those are what we've covered, and there the sites are. And now,
Before you leave, just thank you for the wonderful families
awesome.
you've raised.